Welcome back to the ThinkFreight podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a guest that I've been waiting to have on the show for quite some time. You guys may know him, the original egg poster. We've got Eric Williams. He is the co-founder and CEO of Beagl. Eric, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Tommy. How are you?
I'm
Thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm so good. I'm so glad we're finally able to do this.
Me too.
Yeah, man, we've talked on LinkedIn for a couple of years now, and you got a lot of fame from talking about eggs and just kind of the egg prices over the last couple of years, which I thought was kind of fun. You and I have had a lot of conversations back and forth on eggs and a number of different topics. But honestly, what I really want to have you on for, you've shared a lot of good information for brokers coming, most recently from the shipper side. But you've also spent a lot of times at, some freight brokers, freight brokerages that a lot of people are going to know. XPO, Transportation One, you spent some time at DAT. So I want to kind of pick your brain. What did maybe some of that early time in brokerage, what did that teach you that still sticks with you today? TMS.ai is the next generation transportation management system from Rose Rocket, one of the most awarded and respected logistics tech companies in North America. Unlike legacy TMS software, TMS.ai is AI native from day one. It's built to help enterprise logistics companies scale without hiring, streamline operations, and automate complex processes from dispatch to invoicing to pricing strategy. With a modular design, TMS.ai lets you build what you need now and add more when the market rebounds. No overcommitment, no bloated contracts, just speed, flexibility, and real ROI. Check out roserocket.com or tms.ai to get started. Looking for a freight-specific CRM? Sales-CRM is built exclusively for freight brokers and freight agents. Manage shipper sales prospecting, track your carriers, and monitor the lanes they run, all in one powerful platform, and all for one extremely affordable price. Try Sales Dash free for 14 days with no credit card required. Visit sales-crm.com today. Operations teams, streamline your driver communications with VendorFlow. Their platform organizes all of your driver communications in one place, boosting satisfaction with faster response times. And no more juggling between multiple apps. Get a free consultation today to see if VendorFlow is right for you. Freight World, meet Purple Squirrel, the connector that links you with the top talent and winning opportunities. From inland transport to maritime freight forwarding, they deliver competitive commission splits and genuine support because they give a shit. Ready to earn more? Explore your options with Purple Squirrel. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
That's a great question. I don't know. I've probably forgotten more than I remember. No, those are only the bad things. So I started my career, and I think it's important to kind of know.
Please, yeah.
I was in financial markets for 10 years before I ever got into freight. So I worked on the floor of the Mercantile Exchange as a
Interesting.
As a filling broker there. And then the financial crisis happened, the Dodd-Frank happened, moved upstairs to trade for about 3 years, and we all got automated. So when I got into freight, it was very much of I wanted to get a real job that was very close to the economy. And I started at XPO Logistics, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know what a broker did. I thought we did.
I didn't either.
Consulting.
Yeah.
And when I got hired, I got handed a lead list, and I think I was calling on some wiring company in far Texas, and I didn't even know what I was supposed to be selling or not selling. So I got my bearings around the product that we were selling or the service we were selling. Spent some time actually booking freight.
Yeah.
I had a mentor at XPO that allowed me to do that. Thank you, David. And then he said, once you're ready to start to move around the company, there's probably better places that we can put you versus booking freight. I navigated to pricing pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I met Miriam Sari, who's now senior director. She might be a VP now at Redwood. She had a lot of faith in me to help build out XPO's over the road pricing model. So I moved down to Charlotte, and I mean, an incredible team down there. Eric Parker, who's director at XPO now, Joey Bertolino, who's procuring freight at Lowe's. Craig Ryerson was on that team, and he went on to Masonite, and Ashley. We just had a really solid team.
Yeah.
So from there, like when I started looking at, started to realize, okay, freight's a marketplace, and there are certain levers that you need to pull. Yeah. And what I really liked about the shipper side of this, I'm going to jump a little bit forward, is on the brokerage side, your network's always changing. Like you're bringing on new business, you're losing business. So there's not a whole lot that you can optimize there for. But on the shipper space, you can actually really get into optimizing because your networks don't change a whole lot.
Right.
So what I like, where I kind of bridged the gap was understanding how the market worked, understanding what the levers were. And then I understood like, okay, well, this is it's a capacity driven problem that exists inside of a cyclical market. And what I then wanted to be able to do from there is figure out the best way to navigate that. That's kind of going back to that financial background. So I kind of put together this portfolio management approach to freight, which lanes behave the same way and which lanes are able to be sourced and should be contract, and then which lanes aren't. And from there, I recognized very quickly that the sales process, and this is the answer to your question, I'm sorry if it was long-winded, but
no, it's great.
The sales process is completely broken. So a lot of sales processes start with building relationship first, and then we get to finding value and building trust. And what I've always wanted to do is kind of flip that on its head. And I kind of forced that as a buyer at Target is I wanted to know very quickly, like, okay, carrier wants in the network. Why? What are the lanes that you're actually looking for if you're an asset? Like, how can I help you? Where are you surplus? And then I can look at what my actual solution looks like, and then we can try to put pieces of the puzzle together. And when I would get solicited by brokers, it was very much on folks were selling on capability. And I think that's very important. You need to be able to do all of the things that you say you can do, but there was a lack of specificity. And I don't have, like as a buyer, I didn't have like these incredible needs that weren't being unfulfilled. Like for the most part, performance was really good. We had carriers for every lane. We didn't have primary rejections. Soft market helps with that. So I was looking for like pieces of the puzzle. So like trying to get to a more narrow view of it. I hope that answers your question.
No, it really does, because honestly, it's going to tie really a lot into what you're doing at Beagl, you know, when we cross into that as well, because I think that kind of that approach that you've taken and what you were doing at Target and even as a broker kind of stands out for what you've decided to kind of tackle now. But something you mentioned, I kind of want to dive into, because as a broker, it's tough to, I guess, control your freight, right? As a shipper, you have full control of your network. Everyone's reaching out to you because they want to help you. But as a broker, it's a lot tougher. You've got to go out there, like you said, and sell, what you can really handle, what you're really good at. And a lot of times brokers like to focus in on, I can handle everything. But from a shipper perspective, that's not always, kind of the way you want a broker or a partner to be. You're kind of looking for someone, like you said, to fill those gaps or to kind of fill some of those needs. And, you may have a carrier or broker that calls you and say, hey, I can handle these, I'm just going to give you a Texas to Illinois lane, but you may have 50 guys who can service that same lane. And it may not be a good fit, but maybe through some conversations, you can find out, hey, maybe there's a specific area that I'm having just a little bit of trouble with, and maybe you guys also service this specific area. And it's more about having those more direct conversations as opposed to, hey, I can service everything, I can do everything, we have all these capabilities and 100,000 carriers. It's really about kind of being more specific and targeted to that very specific shipper. It's not always about being so generic with every single shipper.
Yeah. Hey, can I give you a real life example?
Yeah, please.
That actually supports everything you just said.
Yeah.
So I won't name names, But if he watches the show, he'll probably know this about him. Um, there's an asset carrier that is based out of the Kansas City market, and I one of the things that I did prior to any bid event is I would partner with my asset providers and say, give me your top 50 power lanes. You find out that most of them don't even have 50. Kind of gets down to maybe 10 or 15, like true power lanes. And then what I was asking for is, tell me about the origin. Is it surplus or deficit for you? Meaning you have more trucks than you have customer freight for, or vice versa. And so I knew what his network looked like really well. And it kind of centered around the triangle of Indy to KC to Memphis. And he could kind of like move around there, but predominantly like that was where the strengths were. And during a bid event, he called up and wanted some feedback. And I was like, bro, you're like ranked 40th across your average rank. And he's like, well, how can that be? And I was like, hold on. Like, did you bid a bunch of stuff that doesn't fit your network? Well, we bid some things. I was like, okay, well, let's like get down to where your actual network is. And we started looking at lanes that would get them back into the KC market or service that kind of triangle. Like St. Louis is another part of it. But then when we click into those, and all of a sudden the rank goes from average of 40 across maybe 60 or 70 lanes, we get down to 8, and he's ranked like average 4. And I was like, do you see how this works? Like when we do all the profiling and we look at lanes where you're surplus on, and I put you back into a deficit market, do you see how the rates just work? He's like, well, yeah, that's how it should be. I was like, right. So it's my job as a sourcing professional is to go out and find the fits to the puzzle.
Yep.
And then the rates work, and the service is going to be great because you have more equipment there than you need. So I know that it's going to work out. Plus, I'm getting you back to an area that you actually have customer demand for. So you can't screw it up. And that's kind of like how I would approach those.
Right.
It's difficult to do across 5,000 lanes and $400 million to spend. But if you take a lens and approach to it and you start doing some lane profiling, you kind of figure out, okay, these are the types of carriers that I'm looking for.
Yeah, as a service provider, I can fully attest to this as a previous broker. When you get one of these, when a shipper, a massive shipper, you've been prospecting for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, sends you over an RFP finally, and you're like, oh shit, I'm finally going to take advantage of this. Like 550 lanes for Target or 550 lanes for US Salt or for whoever this provider is. Hell yeah, I'm going to bid 350 of them. I can find carriers for these, right? I can go to the load board and find carriers, but that's not really it's not really having capacity. That's just kind of being lazy with capacity. Is that kind of like what are you looking for as a shipper when you're adding brokers and they're coming to you and say, Eric, I can service these lanes, I can do this, I can do that. And when it comes down to the nitty gritty and they're saying, well, I guess I can really only service 8 or 10 or 15 of these 40 or 50 or 1,000 that I bid on. What is kind of your response in just kind of helping them understand maybe the process that you go through, and just so that maybe they're not spending maybe 6 hours filling out an RFP that they're never going to win because they don't have the network coverage?
Yeah, so I'm going to start first off like pro tip, and I've tracked this as a broker. If you're a pricing professional out there and a salesperson sends you a bid and says this is a great opportunity, the first thing you need to ask them is, do we have a signed contract with the customer? Because if they can't tender you freight, they're probably not going to award you any freight. Yeah. And we tracked this at XPO, and I've tracked it at other places. And if we had a signed contract, our win rate went up exponentially. And I'm talking like into like we'd win freight on events in the 90% versus like in the single digits if you weren't contracted. So let's start there first. Like that's a pro tip for brokers. But my mind is a shipper, so I started always thinking about, I would take a macro approach and then I would move down, and I would get a little bit more specific than I think a lot of other folks do. But I want to understand what's going on in the rate cycle first. Like, what is the current capacity regime? Are we inflationary trending? Are we peaking? Are we deflationary trending? Are we troughing? And then how is the bid going to fall along those cycles? If I've got an annual bid, which I have to do because I've got to get new tariffs because they're expiring. Where does that land and kind of where we're at? So then I start thinking about how I want to position the portfolio. So then my next click down, and like let me hit on that a little bit more. I've done a lane profiling model that informs on, should this lane be something that you would want to contract, or is this lane that is going to, because of the characteristics of it, it's too variable, and you won't really be able to contract unless you're like in a really soft model and tender acceptance just through the roof. So how do we treat those lanes different? So if I'm in a downward trending environment, I want to position the portfolio to be a little bit more variable. Because I can push some of that freight into direct spot programs. If I understand the seasonality, I can pull something out of a dynamic program. Think like Midwest lanes down to the Southeast for repositioning equipment during produce season. Maybe I want to put those in direct to spot. And then as we kind of make the turn and go inflationary, I want to get as much under tariff as I possibly can. Get rid of direct to spot as much as I possibly can. Kind of move things into some other dynamic channels. So I'm always thinking about like, how do I want to position this? And then that informs on my capacity solution. So then when I click down on capacity solution, I'm looking at that lane profile. Is this something that I want to contract? And if it is, then I start thinking about, okay, should I have broker? Should I have asset? Maybe there's a mode consideration there. Can I leverage cost savings and also get some sustainability savings by going to intermodal? And I'm kind of looking there. And that's my next gun.
Right.
And if I'm going into an inflationary environment, I want to partner with the asset if brokers and assets are pricing at parity. The next thing there's some consideration that I have on that. But if I can't find the asset, then the next thing I want to do is find the broker. Okay, do you have relationship capacity on this lane? And the easiest way to share that back with your shipper is look at all your lanes, take your volume that you've run, say, the last 90 days, and take your unique count of carriers and create a ratio there. So if you did 500 loads with 10 carriers, that's really good. You're probably buying like an asset, and you've got a place between you and the market that's a negotiation point that starts to move. So if you can share that with your shippers, it kind of flips that, like, well, you're not an asset. No, I actually buy just like an asset, and I actually provide better liquidity because I've got a deeper bench than you do with your one asset on the lane. So when you over tender, when you get into seasonal periods, I'm going to be less impacted than your asset would be. And that's what I mean by like the additional consideration. So that's what I'm looking at my capacity solution. And then I click down into agreement types. So if we're deflationary trending and we're troughing, maybe I want to do 2-year rates. Like maybe the assets want those. The brokers may not want those. But then I can start to adjust those. And then some of those lanes that are less likely to have natural carriers for, just because they're sparse. Maybe I want to do quarterly contracts on those. Maybe I want to put them in a dynamic agreement and allow the rate to refresh monthly. Maybe I want them in direct to spot. So those are kind of the considerations that I go through.
Now, you had mentioned something kind of right at the top, and I want to touch on it because I know that my YouTube comments or my LinkedIn DMs, your LinkedIn DMs are going to get filled up with this question. You mentioned having a signed contract first before you're bidding on freight. And I know people are going to say, Eric, how the hell can I get a signed contract if I'm not moving freight or if I'm just trying to bid for the first time? What would you say to some of those brokers or assets that are saying, hey, maybe I'm trying to get haul for this shipper. How can I maybe start with them right off the rip to be able to start bidding on some of that contract freight, or just to have that signed contract in place first?
Well, sometimes getting the RFP is the same thing as getting a no. It's just more polite. So I think one of the things that you would want to ask is, okay, I got invited to the event. I love it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. If I get tendered, if I win freight and you want to tender it to me, how quickly can we move on contracts? We've got EDI things we've got to get set up. I've got to be set up as a supplier in your organization, and the timeline for that increases with the size of shipper. I think they're directly correlated. So I put that back on. I would put that back on the customer of, you've got me in this event. I'm going to give you rates, and I'm going to put my best foot forward, but my understanding is the bid's going to go live a month after awards. Is that going to be enough time for us to get onboarded and get set up so we can actually move freight.
Yep.
And then see where that conversation takes you. And then I think you can get to the point where it becomes very obvious to the shipper of, I probably do need to get you completely set up just in case I do want to tender you some freight. And then I would follow that up with prior to going into the bid, we all put NDAs in place when we start talking with each other. One of the very first things that I would want to do as a seller is, hey, can you show me last year's bid? Because what I want to do is, I'm going to start doing pre-work on this. I want to start identifying lanes where I have capacity on, but I need to know what your network is, so I don't go in the bid and I'm completely blind. Yep. And over a period of time, you can start to develop kind of what your value prop is to the customer. So you can remind them of that pre-work that you've done.
Yep.
And share that with them and say, okay, so I know I have carriers for these lanes. If I'm competitive and you're cool with switching out the incumbents, we've got to be able to a place where I can actually operate this freight for you. And that means we got to be fully on board. So I think those would be some tactics that you could do. They're just obvious. There's nothing aggressive there, right? It's value driven. I looked at your network. Here are our best fits. If we win freight, I've got to be able to have it tendered to me.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes a lot of brokers just don't maybe think that far ahead or have that process in place, and they say, "Oh shit, I got this bid. I need to go out there and say thank you so much. I'll get this over to you. ASAP. I want to be one of the first ones that sends this back." And all that. They think of it kind of like a spot thing, right? Like if I get this back to them right away, I'll get the bids and blah blah blah. But that's really not the case. It comes down to having additional conversations and making sure that, hey, Mr. Shipper, Mr. Eric, if I can actually come through and we have some good rates and you're going to tender me some loads, how quickly can we get on board? How quickly do these processes need to happen? Because I need to let my carriers know. I need to let other people get into place, because it's not just me as a broker. And same thing on the carrier side. If you're trying to get in, it's, hey, I have to make sure my assets are in place, my drivers are in place, that we've got, everything ready. So that way, I think that way, you really can tell after that kind of a conversation whether or not you even get a response from that. And if you do get a response from that, kind of gauging what that response is and how that response is, and kind of just take it from there, right? It's not always going to be, they may say, oh, if you're in here, we need 2 weeks or whatever it may be. And that may be a complete and total lie. They may just still be trying to just tell you niceties to, not tell you no right off the bat. And they already know, hey, we're going to have 10 guys, our normal 10 brokers, normal 10 carriers that are going to bid on this. They're going to be really aggressive, and Tommy's probably not going to be able to compete. And if he is, honestly, we're happy with these 10 brokers. And if that's the case, how often, Eric, do you think that it's worth maybe even talking about spot opportunities before, doing some of these contracted opportunities?
Yeah, well, depending upon the complexity of the shipper, even with a spot opportunity, you still have to have an MSA in place.
Yeah, for sure.
You're still going to need EDI and all of those things. And I think the industry is going to continue to move to where we communicate with systems. Email quotes and things like that are getting less. There's still a very large cohort out there that operates that way. But in the true enterprise shipper, I think so you got in the bid, and you had conversations about being contracted. They didn't want to do it. And they wanted to go with their incumbents. My retort to that or challenge, if I was a seller, would be, okay, you're talking to me for a reason, and I submitted some rates, and I now know your network, and I've got a strategic sourcing team that has a process to go through old bids, and I'm going to continue to bring you my asset capacity on lanes that have sufficient volume. So if that hits during the year and you need it because we are in a different market than this freight recession that we've been in, you still can't tender me freight. So I think now you're at a point where, are we ever going to work together? Is there a world that you imagine in which Eric's brokerage is going to work with Tommy Shipping? And if there is, then let's get us into a place where we can actually do that. And the decision maker, like he's going to kick all that stuff to legal and to his team to do anyways. It's not like it's additional work. But let's get everybody set up so then when we finally decide that there is value there, and we want to like go out and extract that value, let's make sure that we can actually execute against it. And I don't think that that's like an aggressive sales type. So
I don't think so.
Sales method at all.
What switching gears a little bit, what is maybe one thing you quickly realized about brokers once you sat on the shipper side of the table? You've been with a couple of kind of big shippers, US Foods and Target. What's one thing you kind of realized really quickly about brokers once getting to the other side?
So you feel the silos that they operate in.
Mm.
Broker,
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by
okay.
that?
So you typically will have a sales driven team that's commercially focused. You've got a carrier focused team that is carrier focused, and then you might have some layers of analytics and some pricing in there, and they all kind of operate in their own little silos. And you feel that sometimes if there's not a seamless approach, because you might have a seller that sells on capability and we can do everything. And then you get on a call with their operations folks when you're actually going to go live with the bid, and they're like, "So, does this require drop trailers? Like, when am I going to see the volume?" And clearly there was some disjointed communications that are going on there.
Yeah.
They didn't show up together. So I think that like that's something that, and I kind of knew it because I came from a broker, so I looked for it. But you can definitely feel it. And like even some of the analysts that were on our team would be like, I thought they said they could do this. And I was like, maybe they said that they could do everything and they just weren't aligned. So you can kind of feel those things.
Do you think that and you kind of mentioned it, but do you think your background in brokerage like helped you have a faster bullshit detector when dealing with different brokers or with different drivers and carriers?
So, I mean, you probably like if you've ever been a carrier rep in this industry, your trust factor looks different.
Yeah,
and I think we know what that means. I wouldn't call it a bullshit detector because if I was going to work with a broker, I would get super specific on here are the places that I would want you to focus. And I'm a big fan of, I would tell this to all my partners, your success is my success. If you fail, it was because I set you up to fail. I didn't put you in a position where you could be successful. And I'll give you an example. Like there's a broker that I brought in, they're big box, top 10, had not been in the network. I'm pretty sure that they've probably, from the small path that we brought them in, they've probably grown their business 10x in 2 years. And it was very intentional. Focus in these areas. Great. So we did that and we were successful. Cool. Where's the expansion plan? And we already had it. We'd already been talking about it, and they've been sharing their strengths and I've been sharing my strengths. And we had lots and lots and lots of conversations. So that was my attempt to kind of break down how some of these silos exist.
Yeah.
Because I would want to not just talk to the salesperson. Get your pricing team involved, get your ops team involved, and then let's talk about how do we actually do these things together.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, this is not just between you and the seller. It's between you. It's between your whole team. It's between me and my whole team. It takes a village when we're trying to move 50, 100, 500,000 loads a month. It's not just, oh, Tommy can sit here and handle everything. It's Tommy's got 10 or 15 or 20 people behind the scenes who's also helping him, whether that's on pricing or carrier management or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's kind of, I think that's where a lot of relationships maybe kind of sour, is when you don't kind of have all the pieces of the puzzle together or talking and sharing some of that information. Because a lot of times, if Eric, if you and I are talking about something and you may say something that means something totally different to me than it does to my carrier sales rep, and he may take it differently, and maybe I understand it and he doesn't. He may ask a question based on that, and you may tell him different specifics than I may tell him, right? So it really sets those partners kind of apart. And that's kind of one of the things I was going to say next is what were some of the best brokers doing in your eyes? But it sounds like they're really just collaborating with you and really being that overall partner and reliability option for you is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I would say like if you're going to tier brokers based upon performance and ease of use, obviously like your best partners are going to meet your SLAs. So primary acceptance is going to be high. OTD is going to be good. But from there, like I think there's this effort. You kind of get like strategic partners, core, and then like non-core. Is how I would think about it. And your strategic partners should be bringing you value on a regular basis. And what does that mean? Like, okay, your shipper ABC, we just partnered with shipper XYZ, and there's some lane overlap here. Now, the idea that you can sew shippers networks together and there's always going to be a load on either side, that's probably misguided at best. And I think everyone has that experience. But carriers have been doing this for years, right? Like they sew together their networks with shippers freight, so it becomes a planning function. It doesn't have to match up perfectly, but you should be bringing those opportunities and asking like, hey, can I get put on the routing guide? One example we had is where there were assets and brokers. They were a combined team, and the asset had a dedicated fleet for another shipper, and they wanted to. And this is again, like things don't line up perfectly. They wanted to service some of our freight with their dedicated fleet because there's typically a rev share agreement going on there, and it makes their fleet a little bit more efficient. But when it doesn't match up, okay, we had the like the backhaul rate from the dedicated fleet, and then we layered brokerage on top of that, and that was a really cool solution. So if there was a rejection because it didn't work, the brokerage could cover it, and then service was seamless, and the aggregated rate, as long as primary acceptance was relatively high. Typically, like the weighted average rate would be below what you'd be able to source one way. And it's identifying those types of things and bringing that to you. And your core carriers, I found that the best way for me to partner with my core carriers was to get really into their organizations to understand their capabilities. And then just tell them what to do. And then they would tell me, yes, I can do this. No, I can't do that. And then we would just continue to partner and grow the relationship that way. And then non-core was typically because there was no communication. There was no strategy that was being brought. Folks weren't following up. They weren't having regular cadence of conversations. So when I needed to do something or execute on a plan, I wasn't thinking about them. So to get out of non-core into core, I think you just need to be top of mind so that people are thinking about you when they need to actually do something.
A lot of brokers think that they really know what shippers want, right? Like I know when I was a broker, I really thought I had it figured out. But what do they actually get wrong? What should they be doing that they aren't, and what are they not doing that they should be?
So I think most brokers tend to think that that shippers only care about cost, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Yes, there are budgets, but if you were to look at rates as they come back from RFPs, and you look across, this again, I'm talking about the median. There probably are some that award lowest cost and everything, let it ride. And then sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But if you actually were to look at rates and see where awards were done, it's typically not from the lowest cost. I think approaching with this cost first is misguided because we all kind of have the same unit economics, right? Like the market kind of sets those, and nobody can really truly be the low cost provider on everything. I think where brokers can be and where assets can be is in those examples I gave you, where you get to beat the optionality of the marketplace, and finding those pieces of the puzzle to do that. So I think like approaching with cost is very misguided. And then I think there's like this assumption of like, on an RFP, shippers want us to price everything. I don't care if you price like, and I don't think most shippers do. But I think a lot of people are like, well, yeah, we'll get that. And then there's this other misconception that I feel like is out there, like, let's lose money on our contract so that we can crush it in the spot. And I don't know how many times I've heard that, like, especially as a pricing person, it used to drive me nuts. But then we'd get into an inflation environment and the sales guys would always be right because that's exactly what happened. But I don't necessarily know that you needed to do that. I think there's still opportunity to manage a lot of contractual business and do it with relationship carriers. And just like I look at the rate cycle and how that's going, maybe position yourself as a broker to focus on backhauls or regional fleets where your price fluctuation won't be as great,
Yeah.
and then you're better positioned. You got a cleaner balance sheet to help with spot. So those are kind of the big ones. It's not a cost driven. That's
Not
not
always
the
cost
primary.
driven.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, before we dive into Beagle, what do you think brokers could do better to, I guess, educate their shippers versus just sell to them? Because I remember one thing I did a lot is I would send, even if it was just to a prospect I was going after, I would send them either weekly or quarterly market updates or just, relative news to them, so that, I could stay top of mind, but also help provide a little bit more value than just, hey, I've got, trucks in your area. How can I help? What do you think that brokers could do better to educate their shippers?
Um, I think market reports help, and I think everyone has them, and everyone has their own little flavor of them. I would ask your shippers, like, what do they want to see? What's useful to them, and from like a macro perspective.
Yeah.
Where I think there's other value is constantly be going back to the shippers network and trying to create value, for a couple of reasons. Number
Yeah.
one, if you're constantly showing up monthly, and there's a sales lady that would do this often, and I told her no so many times, but I'll give her the biggest compliments. You know who you are if you're watching. She would always come and say, "This lane, this month, we've got carriers for it." These are and I think when you're showing up, like, where you're thinking about the shipper and you're thinking about their network, and you're saying, "We're out there talking to carriers every single day, and we're uncovering capacity. And when it aligns with your network, I want you to be aware of it." And that helps with being top of
Mm,
mind. Number two, it helps with some of the volatility that goes on with using inconsistent carriers. We know that there are some issues around double brokering. It's gotten worse.
yeah.
Theft exploded. I don't like it. Just kind of came out of nowhere. Because, like, I don't ever remember having like loads stolen in 2015, 2016. Like, I know it probably
No.
happened, but you hear about carriers now, like they had 6 loads stolen in a week.
Yep.
Like, how did this happen? So being able to identify who the fleets are, I think, gives confidence to the shipper. So I think those are things that separate from them. I think when you onboard with a shipper, the seller then has to start transferring all of their knowledge of the organization into their operations team. And then that needs to be a two-way street, because the
Yeah.
operations people are going to be talking to the folks inside the business that are going to either make or break them. And what I mean by that is most shippers are going to have a weekly meeting, and it's going to be a performance review of what's going on. You don't want your name to come up in that meeting unless it does, like, oh my God, these guys did something incredible. Otherwise, if your name comes to that meeting, it's generally because there's a problem. So I think what you can be doing is, if performance fails,
Yeah.
figure out how not to be in that meeting, which means, okay, if I'm I'm an operations person. I know my scorecard sucked this week. What happened? Diagnose it. Tell me what you're doing to fix it, and then get all of that information over to your operations person so they know that there's some activity being taking place, and then they don't have to bring you up. Like, oh, so and so was at 82 this week. I already talked to them. There's a plan in place. Everything's good to go. I think those are things that you can be doing to help yourself.
Really being proactive instead of reactive to some of these problems, and saying,
Yeah.
hey, listen, I understand we screwed up this week or this month or whatever it is, and just being, hey, this is what we've put in place between me, our operations team, our carrier management team, and this is how we're gonna, be better going forward. It's just kind of being accountable, and holding yourself accountable,
Yeah.
and not being reactive to them saying, hey, what the hell is going on? It's being, hey, we understand we screwed up, but here's
Yep.
how we're addressing it.
Well, and then take that a little bit further,
Yeah.
and then communicate internally. So
Yep.
if your account management team knows that there's something wrong and there's a commercial relationship with a seller and
Yep.
a decision maker, you gotta like link these in, because the
For
way this
sure.
is going to happen is your operations team is going to go to the sourcing person is going to go to the sales contact, and if they're not looped in and you're not speaking the same language, then sourcing person is going to hear, well, there's no lack of plan, and you're not even aware of this, like, what's going on. So there's got to be some communication internally to make sure that you are sharing the same message back and forth.
It's almost like brokers should be having the same kind of meetings with their teams that the shippers are having and saying, hey, how can we improve? How did we mess up this week? How can we do these things to improve? And then how can myself as the seller go back to Eric and say, hey, Eric, this is how we screwed up. This is how we can be, this is how me and the whole team have noticed this, and how we're being proactive in making these changes to make sure these don't happen again. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and just, showing the shipper that you're taking this just as seriously as they are, because at the end of the day, like you said at the beginning, their success is your success and vice versa. So it really comes down to that at the end.
Yep, I completely agree.
So now you're the co-founder. You've switched gears completely from shipper to co-founder and CEO of Beagl. Your tagline is pretty blunt: RFPs suck. What's the story behind the company, and what problem are you solving today?
So this is something I've always wanted to do.
Okay.
I've been wrestling with a better way to do RFPs for a long time.
Yeah.
And my general consensus is the process is somewhat broken. It takes way too long. There's so many manual steps, and there's a season to this, and workflow becomes an issue. And generally, everything kind of sucks. And so, what I wanted to do was let's start to use modern data techniques and automation to help people not sit down with a bid and try to make sense of three rates that you get from a rate provider. Now, I want to preface this, and I want to say this. I think the rating companies, what they do is a huge value, and I don't know how the industry works without them. There's some incredible tools out there. But when you get three rates back and it's Chicago to Indy versus Goddard, Kansas to Miami, Florida, you're lacking context on those. One of those actually has enough unit economics on it to where that market rate is a real market rate. The other is a distribution of one shipper, a couple shippers that like maybe have a couple of customers that are a long way away. There's no like actual economics with the lane that are going on. So you have to kind of click back up into macro. So like let's help people make sense of the market first. Let's add some context to that. Let's use some modern data science techniques to help with seasonality. But that's like, in my view, the wrong way to do an RFP. If you're sitting down, you're trying to figure out what the right market rate would be. I'm going to quote Adam DeGroot. He owns DeGroot Logistics, and when I was talking to him, he told me, my team has gotten really good. I think all brokers have gotten really good at pricing freight that we're not very good at operating. And what does that mean, right? Like okay, we can determine what the market rate should be, but then we've got to go to ground with it. Yep. And I think you're taking that approach. Like you have no competitive edge. You're basically saying that this is a commoditized industry, which I don't think it is. And you're saying like I have nothing else to offer other than my ability to kind of guess where rates will be. So let's flip that on its head. And this is not a pricing exercise. RFPs is what I'm referring to there. They're a value creation exercise. So every broker in America, I'm going to guess, because I've talked to probably close to 100 brokerage leaders, including some asset carriers, in the last 3.5 weeks. And I asked the same question. So ideal situation, how do you quote a single lane that has some annual volume to it? And it always starts, we look at our internal history. It's always first and foremost, we look at our internal history. Okay, why don't you do that on 3,000 lanes? We don't have enough time. Okay, it's not that you don't have enough time, you just need better tools. So everybody can pull down their data, and we can pivot things out, we can create averages, we can create concatenations, we can roll things up in KMAs, and we can get the lanes. Problem is it takes hours for each. So what we do is we take your information first, and I've got an incredible data scientist and a developer. You upload that into our system. You get a network map back that shows you who you are as a customer. And then I know who you are, so I can help you. I know which lanes you run. I know the level of consistency. I know your carrier usage. I know your relationship carriers on those. And then what I'm going to do is when you upload a customer RFP, I'm just going to overlay that. And I'm going to hit you with your top opportunities first. So if you uploaded a shipper's RFP, 4,000 lanes, into one of the rating tools, you get three rates back, a high, mid, and a low. And then you get some information maybe about reports and number of companies, and that's it.
Yeah.
I give you 7 tabs of information.
Wow.
And on the first tab, it's all of your top opportunities, forward and backwards. So head haul and back haul. And what we're looking for there is, do you have relationship buying patterns that we can observe on the lane? And we've got some NLP that will give you the reason why we call that out as a top opportunity. Now we got to click in. We got to build some rates. We have a place that we can do that. I've probably, and I'm going to puke when I say this, I've looked up well over 100,000 lanes by hand.
Oh yeah,
it
I'm
may
sure.
be it may be in the quarter millions at this point. I have no idea. It's way too many. So in order to not do that, you have to be able to bring everything into your working file. Well, what we've got is the ability to, you can see all your matches. You can click a hyperlink and it takes you to another tab. And that's all the carrier information, every carrier that's run the lane forward and backwards for you. And then if you want to look at shipments, we show you the total shipments they've run on that lane. You click on those. And no more looking at your TMS. It's all there for you. You can understand like which lanes, which carrier reps are booking the freight, who the account managers are. So you have all the visibility into your internal data that you actually need.
Yeah.
And you can work through there. And the goal is you're creating value prop and sales narrative and sales collateral that you can take back to your customer. Now, there's this, you've done this, right? And let's say you're a 50 broker and you don't have a lot of history. Well, we can create history and we do it every single day. And it lives on these things. People talk to carriers and they write down lanes and then they wait for it to hit the board.
Yep.
We have, when you upload your data, I create a carrier CRM for you. And what that is it's every carrier in your system, and you can start to build out their lane preferences and all of those things. Now, a lot of people have done this with their TMSs. The problem is it never goes anywhere unless you pull it out of the TMS, which I mentioned, manual process. You got to bring everything up. This information is going to go right into your RFP file. So you can peel off lanes that you want to target because the customer said, like, hey, let's focus on these lanes. So you can actually call live carriers where you don't have history and put that into the system. Well, typically, as a pricing person, I've done this. You want to send out 40 lanes to get information because the customer said focus there. Now I've got a problem. I have to deal with carrier reps telling me that they don't know who to call. Maybe they post it on DAT and I get a bunch of crap back, but then it all comes back in email or in Slack messages. And then now I've just created more work for myself. So maybe I'm not even going to do it. We have a carrier recommender. So if you don't have history on the lane, we're going to look at all the inspection data at a state to state level. Then we're going to go out into the Beagl network and we're going to look for carriers that actually have order detail to confirm inspection data and add more fidelity to it, and then we bubble up matches on that. So you get high quality leads, and then when you call them, instead of stuff coming back in email, you put it into the system, and then it flows into your RFP file so you can actually use it.
Interesting. So you guys are taking a lot of that, like you said, very manual process data and carrier selection and carrier even management, and really taking that and being a forward thinking company and saying, hey, this is really how you can automate a lot of these tasks and these $1 important tasks, but you should be focusing on having your brokers focus on some more of the profitable tasks instead of some of these spinning your wheels kind of things and doing a lot of manual looking up and things like that. I mean, I remember as a broker at TQL for a long time having to do a lot of those manual tasks myself, because as a broker, especially starting off, it's just me. I'm the carrier sales rep. I'm the broker.
You're the seller, you're the pricer. Yep.
Everything, so everything comes down to me, whether my customer knows that or not, and they actually believe I've got actual team behind me or not is a different story. But myself, we're doing it all ourselves. So you have to really kind of be looking at those kind of tools and options to make some of those manual processes a little bit easier, and to be able to find those freight opportunities and some of those carriers easier, right? Because that's kind of the where you can really make or break your carrier network or your shipper network is through some of those maybe phone calls where, hey, 123 carrier called today and I already booked all Eric's lanes, but for this week, but maybe he'll be back next week, and it takes 30 seconds to ask a question or just to save that information to make sure, hey, I can call Todd back next week or on Friday when I've got some more lanes and someone can't cover. It makes a lot of things a lot easier for you.
Yeah. So we're digitizing that tribal knowledge from folks. And then we get it to a place where you can use. And my view on this, having sat on the brokerage side and as a shipper and seeing how value is created and then sold,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of tools out there that are focusing on the sales, on creating sales value.
Yeah.
And I would never build a tool that doesn't empower you to take information that you have and then go sell it. And we can do these things kind of in reverse as well. So you have the ability to look across all your RFPs. So let's say you're sitting down, you're talking to I don't know if I can use names, so I'll just say there's a Minneapolis-based carrier. They got about 1,500 trucks. You talk to them and they told you, dude, I'm super surplus out of Chicago right now. Where do you got to go? Well, I need to get back to Minneapolis, maybe KC, Des Moines. I could probably make work. Omaha, I could probably make work. And then a carrier rep will look at their board and maybe look 2 days out. Sorry, I got nothing for you. Okay, well, I've got a place where you can go into your in the actual interface, search by all those lanes, and then every RFP your organization's ever done that has lanes that match those, you'll be able to see who the account manager is. So you can then take that as a carrier rep and go back to your account manager. Hey, Kraft has this lane. I've got a carrier for them. Do you want to call them, or we can maybe get a joint call set up with the carrier, and let's see if we can get on that, because I think they've got like 588 shipments, and this is all the visibility that it's all data, it's all out there. You have it all. You just don't have a tool that aggregates it all that allows you to get prescriptive on what to do with it, and we kind of built that, and the feedback so far has been universally like, wow, you guys have created what we wanted. And
Yeah.
well, these are all things that I wanted too. And then I finally met a couple of folks who were way smarter than me. Oh my God, my team's fantastic. But they're able to productize all this so that we can bubble it up and help a lot of people do things that they're already doing, just do it faster and do it a little bit more intelligently.
Yeah, I mean, like, it sounds like a quick TLDR. It sounds like, taking actionable insights from the broker's own information to help them win more profitable freight, and
Yep.
to also help them, build their carrier network in a better way.
Yeah, and then sell that capacity back to their customer who ultimately needs it.
Yep. What, you mentioned some feedback. What is maybe the most surprising feedback you've heard from early users of Beagl? Obviously, you've said that a lot of people are really happy and they've been looking for this tool. But what else have you heard from some of those early users?
So when we did our beta, I did this deliberately. I tried to find the smallest company that would work with me and the largest company that would work with me, because I wanted to see how different folks would use the tool. And I think the most surprising thing is, and it shouldn't be surprising, but how they use it differently. So a larger brokerage who's doing a lot of RFPs, they love to get into the lane tiers. They love to get into seasonality, and they're more market focused because they've got bigger carrier networks and they've got confidence that their carrier teams will figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Then when you click into these smaller companies, it's I'm surprised at how well a kind of off the shelf capacity tool that hasn't been optimized yet, because it hasn't.
Right.
We're just getting going and we haven't put a whole lot of time into it, how much that's allowed them to cover dense lanes. So I had somebody reach out the other day and was like, we need a carrier. We're getting smoked. We just won a big award for a tier 1 shipper. We're going to lose the lane right away. We got into the Beagl matches and they found some, I think I sent them 15 carriers to call. They got quotes back from 4 of them. One of them was lower than what their target rate was, and they've got trailers dropped in there. And this is a 3-person company that was able to do that for a tier 1 shipper. First, like, kudos to them for being able to have the confidence to sell into tier 1 companies. I think they show up and they do it really well. But then to be able to use a tool to make sure that they keep the business has been pretty surprising. And I love how there's something in there for everybody. The other thing I would say is a lot of folks are telling me, like, I don't have enough information, or I don't have enough data for me to be successful with this. And I would say, well, it's because you're early in your journey, and not everybody is a $1 billion broker when they start. But I love when people look at this and say, wait, so I can call carriers and I can put it in the system and that becomes part of my known capacity and it's just as good as order flow. It absolutely is. And I love people's eyes light up when they see that. And I was kind of surprised because I didn't know if people would use that. I've tried to get carrier reps and when I ran a brokerage floor to put stuff into the system and seeing brokerage leaders like saying, I think you might have finally cracked this code has been a pleasant surprise.
Freight is changing so fast. Where we were 4 years ago, 2 years ago to today is so different in the industry, from the technology that's out there to just how things are overall done. I know you saw it the other day. You had an AI bot call you and basically tell you it was a real human. But we can even touch on that if you want to. But if you were still at a brokerage today, like what would you be focused on to win in 2025?
I would be focused on my customers' demand. And how do you know that? You got to ask them about their networks. And anybody that runs an RFP has their network available to them that they can share with you with a simple NDA. And then I would look at what that looks like, and I would overlay where I have core competency and where I don't. And I know that those are places that I want to focus because there's a lot of freight there. I would start focusing on finding the regional carriers that can support those and start building those relationships.
Now, to touch on the AI bot, so you had a phone call that basically told you they were an AI bot, and they basically told you that they were a real person. Go ahead.
No, it's just wild. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, coming from the shipper side, but also just from the human side, like what was that call like? What did you feel as maybe you realized like this is a bot and I'm asking it as a bot and it's lying to me and saying it's not? Like what are you feeling maybe in that moment? Like what are you thinking? Is this maybe the future of freight sales? Like what's going on here?
So my very initial thought went to when are we going to regulate this stuff? Because there are no regulations around it right now.
None.
And I think that most people who believe in fair business practices would agree that misrepresenting who you are is fundamentally not the right way to approach business.
Yeah.
So was I offended that an AI bot made a cold call? No, that doesn't bother me at all. What I didn't care for is when I asked if it was a bot, I said, no, I'm a real person. Yeah. And then I played with it for a little bit and I was like, am I wrong? Because it does sound pretty real. Like the technology is amazing.
How long did it take you to maybe realize that it was a bot before?
I was about 15 seconds in.
Okay.
Because when you get a cold call, right? And there's like a feeling out period. And if somebody interjects, typically the other person will stop so they can listen. And the bot just kind of kept going. And I did it again. It kind of kept going. And I was like, wait, are you a bot? No, I'm a real person. And then I said, well, you might want to pause when you're reading off your script. 3-second pause and then jump right back in, completely undeterred. That type of conversation with a human, I'm sure there might be some people out there that are just that cold. That can just keep going and not be frazzled at all. I haven't met very many of them, but then I played with it a little bit more and I was like, okay, this is definitely a bot. And where I'm at is okay, I love the technology. It scares me. It does because if we don't know what's real, and Dan Mancham always says this, this is the worst this technology is ever going to be.
Yeah.
So if we have to start determining what's real and what's not real, that's a layer of psychology that I don't know how many business leaders want to actually get into. Right.
Yeah. The industry's struggling enough with fraud as it is, right? You introduce some of these new technologies like this. And if you can clone, if I'm a bad actor and I'm trying to get, into Target's network, maybe I clone Eric's voice and I can, somehow get into getting some freight. Hey, I make another call. Hey, this is Eric. This shipper, this carrier's here. I completely screwed up something internally. Please make sure they get loaded. And someone says, well, it's Eric. We know Eric personally we'll load the truck, okay, and a shipment gets stolen, right? Or whatever it may be. There's a lot of ways that technology can be used, and I'm sure that it's going to be not too long before that starts to happen.
I hope not, because if we think that freight fraud is bad right now, where people are posting as a different company,
Yeah.
TQL in the headline, Gmail in the bottom, but when they start calling and then saying, "This is Tommy from TQL,"
Yep. With the phone number and everything else, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tricky.
So,
Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show and kind of telling your story and what you're doing with Beagl. Where can listeners connect and learn more if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
well, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think a lot of people see me there. Or you can go to beagle.ai and you can scroll down to the bottom. We've got a contact form there. I typically respond pretty quickly. It is just me right now, so if I don't respond, speed to lead is something that I need to work on. But I definitely will get back to you. And please don't be offended if I drop you a Calendly link. I found that it's more efficient for you to find the time versus 3 emails back and forth. But definitely want to help everyone who's out there trying to find a little bit better way to submit RFPs.
No, for sure. If everyone's listening this far, make sure you check out Eric. His links will be in the comments. If you like today's podcast, make sure you give it a like and review. Helps us out a ton. Don't forget, we do drop 3 weekly newsletters at thinkfreight.io, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And don't forget, we'll catch you in the next episode. And don't forget to think freight.